Hello guys. So I've got the stereo out of my car at the minute because I was just sorting out a loose connection. Basically I was fiddling around back here the other day and managed to knock something loose. So I've just sorted that. But I thought whilst I've got it out I would take the opportunity to do a quick video on changing the stereo system on an Alfa Romeo, specifically the Alfa Mito. Because there was one thing in particular that came up as a bit of an issue, which there's not a massive amount of information online about, so I just wanted to basically go over that. Now, one thing I will say, if you're going to swap the stereo out on these cars, really think hard about whether it's worth it, because as you'll find out in a minute when I explain, it's not the cheapest thing to do, because there are some things that you just have to buy, it's unavoidable. And the standard stereo does have a lot of features. It's got Bluetooth, it's got USB and AUX and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, unless you're adding a feature, like for instance with me, I wanted a larger, more responsive touchscreen, and more specifically I wanted Apple CarPlay. So I was adding a feature the car didn't have, and for me it was worth it. But unless you're adding a feature like that, or you want to be able to watch videos on the screen or whatever, you know, if you're just after a slightly better quality of sound, it might not necessarily be worth it to bother. But anyway, let's get into it. So basically, the problem I had, I will put all this back together in a minute so you can see it, but when I plugged the new stereo system in, what would happen is the mileage on the dash, the odometer, would flash constantly. And the reason for that is because on the Alfa Mito, and I'm pretty sure it's the same with quite a few of the other Alfas as well, half of the vehicle settings are on that little screen there, and the controls are over there, and the other half are actually on the stereo system. So this is hang on, let's get this up, this is the standard stereo system, and yeah, there's some vehicle settings which are actually on this. Specifically, you've got the time and date changing, and the ability to turn the daytime running lights on and off and stuff like that. Now, these aren't necessarily settings that you'll miss. I mean, being able to change the date and time is obviously quite handy, but obviously you can do that on the stereo as well separately, so you know, you might not necessarily miss that, but it can get quite annoying when you're driving along and the mileage is just constantly flashing. And there were several things I needed to do to fix this. So, well, I say several, there's actually only one thing, but I kind of had to go through several different cables to get the right one. So basically the issue is all down to the connection between the stereo and the car itself. So when I first got the stereo, I just got a bog standard ISO connection to connect the stereo to the car, and sure enough, stereo fired up, worked perfectly fine, but obviously I didn't have steering controls. So the next thing I did was go and buy a slightly more expensive cable which had the steering control adapter. And you would have thought that, you know, bearing in mind the steering control adapters have these converter boxes on them as well anyway, they'd take into account that the mileage would flash and do something about it. But no, the only way you can stop the mileage from flashing is to basically get one of these, which is a info adapter. So what this does is, it's got the steering wheel controls, it's got all the other bits, but what it also has, additionally to that, is the ability to display vehicle settings on the aftermarket device. And that's the key point, because that's what the car's doing. It's looking around going, hang on a minute, I can't actually see where half of the settings are, so it's throwing a bit of a wobbly and making mileage flash. So yeah, let me just put this back together and I'll show you what it's like now. Okay, so here we go. This is the unit actually installed. Just do a quick comparison, the new unit compared to the old one. As you can see, it just looks like a little bit more sleek, a bit nicer, and has a lot more going on, as I'll show you in a minute. But the most important thing is the mileage is now not flashing, as hopefully you can see. So what this does, as you can see, I've put the Alfa Romeo logo on the back there. I wanted to kind of make it look like original equipment as much as possible. But yeah, obviously we've got the Apple CarPlay on there. But if I go to, see if I can remember where it is, right, if I go to the AV sources and go to the camera view, see, this is what I was talking about with the info adapter. It's now displaying the settings that were on the original stereo system are now on the aftermarket one. So now I can go through this list, and using the up and down buttons on the steering wheel and the torque button, I can go into various settings. So if I go into vehicle settings, for instance, I can go down, where are we? Change the time, change the, see, that's the lights, so I can change the daytime running lights, all that kind of thing, greeting lights. The other thing it does, which is quite nice, don't know if this will work with the engine off, but I'll give it a go. So on the other stereo system, when you change the driving modes on the Alfas, it comes up on the screen. Now, this doesn't do it when you've just got the normal stereo view up. You have to have this window up, but if I stick it into, yeah, there you go, see, goes through dynamic, natural, all weather. As I say, it doesn't, this doesn't come up whenever you press that when you're driving along. It's only if you have it on this screen. If I like go back to this screen, for instance, and change it, it doesn't do it. But you know, I don't really care too much about that. If I just go back into, oh no, if I just go back into that, where are we? Camera view. Yeah. Another thing that's quite cool. So when you put the car into reverse, you've got a little thing up here that comes up, and it's got the reverse sensors at the back and beeps. But if you have this screen on, it also comes up with this here, which again, you know, I don't really use that, but it's just a nice thing to have, I guess. But anyway, yeah, there you go, guys. So as I say, anyone who's looking to stick an aftermarket stereo system into an Alfa Romeo, particularly the Mitos, yeah, unless you are happy to have the mileage flashing constantly, because it doesn't affect the car really, it's just annoying, I suppose. So, you know, if you can live with that, you can just go for the slightly cheaper steering wheel adapter, and then you'll have the steering wheel controls and everything else work, but you'll just have to put up with that flashing, and also put up with the fact that you can't change the date and time, and you can't turn the daytime running lights off or do anything like that. But you know, if you want to do it properly, then you do really need to go for that adapter. I will stick a link in the description as to what adapter I've got in this car, and hopefully, as I say, this video has been useful to any of you guys out there who are looking to change your stereo or having this specific problem. Yeah, there you go.